what am I doing here is, I guess, my question. And it seems to me that it's a good question to ask in a commencement speech. What am I doing here? Or perhaps another way of putting it, why me? Which is a very useful question. Two simple words which, depending on their inflection, can express everything from dark night of the soul delving to adenoidal self-pitying whininess, either one of which is suitable to the occasion of graduating from college. Why me? What am I doing here? Perhaps you invited me to do the speech because you know no one in the theater would have the poor taste to try to answer a question like that. You could ask your parents, why me, if in asking you mean, how did I come to be like this? They, after all, made you, at least some of you. No one will ask them to take responsibility for the whole of you. But if in asking why me, you are inquiring after the specifics of your specificity, why me and not someone else, you could begin by looking into your origins. Some of the answers can be found in your home, and by setting the answers you glean through observation, coercion, and psychoanalytic psychotherapy in a dialectical spin with the facts of your place in history, in time, in the world at large, in the culture which is your larger context, in the ideology you have inherited and I hope transformed by living, and which, with your psyche, is the prism through which your self or your soul is refracted, the light and air baffle through which your flame or the smoke from your smoldering transverses to reach the exterior world, by setting the inner and the outer up as combatants on the epic dramatic stage in your head, you will arrive, maybe by the time you're 80, maybe earlier if you work hard at it, at some understanding of yourself. If you don't fear the dark night of the soul, you will. And you won't fear it as long as you remember that no one is really happy, only Bush is happy. The best you can hope for is happy-ish. And that the real value of a dark night of the soul is that it's maybe the surest way of ascertaining that you have one, a soul, that is. A few rare souls are genuinely native to daylight, but in my experience, most of us, if we have souls, have the nocturnal kind. They aren't dark, but darkness may be their element. Darkness is a comfort to anything so divided against itself. There, see, who needs a rabbi? Having some answer to the why me question, having done the work to change the way you inflect that question from the adenoidal to the introspective, is useful as you try to answer the other question, what am I doing here? A question which vast forces of reaction, otherwise known as the devil, the Republican Party, the petrochemical industry, Dick and Lynn Cheney, call them what you will, but vast and nearly ineluctably persuasive and pervasive forces of reaction will seek to answer for you. You are here to consume and to surrender. You are here to comply, to be in agreement. You are not, these agents of sin and Satan will tell you, here to do anything, or rather you are not here to ask what. The only action, the only agency permissible is the secret unspoken compact of compliance you make with an order so vast it is nearly invisible. The secret surrender you have made of your own specificity in the name of an anti-human, unjust, anti-egalitarian, anti-democratic ideology which masks its brutality in the guise of an individualism which enforces conformity and a freedom which exists within a desperately circumscribed arena of economic terror, scarcity, and selfishness. What you are doing here, these forces will tell you, is knowing never to ask the question, what am I doing here, in a way that your perilous security is imperiled, in such a way that your civilization's failure to provide for you anything like civilized security, safety, luxury, a home, is exposed through your asking and answering. This has always been true, as I'm sure you've learned in your classes and in your lives. There have always been these forces, these imps and these demons, this terror. But you graduate into a world in which the terror has become exponentially greater, though its aim is essentially unchanged. Its aim is the preservation of the global economy of violence and oligarchy, the preservation of grotesquely unequal distribution of the world's wealth and the human services and societal and cultural infrastructures that go with wealth. Its aim is the perpetuation of the tragedies of unequal development. Its aim is injustice, and though it doesn't even know it itself, it is one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. The answers you provide for yourself to the question, why me, will be of great consequence to the way you answer, what am I doing here? But if I may succumb to the immemorial nasty habit of commencement speakers since back in the days when the robes you were wearing were street clothes, and offer you advice, one of the answers to the what question ought to be, I am here to organize. I am here to be political. I am here to be a citizen in a pluralist democracy. I am here to be effective, to have agency, to make a claim on power, to spread it around, to rearrange it, to democratize it, to legislate it into justice. Why you? Because the world will end if you don't act. Hope is not a choice. Hope is a moral obligation. It's a human obligation. It's an obligation to the cells in your body. Hope is a bodily function. It's the same as breathing and eating and sleeping. Hope is not naive. Hope grapples endlessly with despair. Real, vivid, powerful, thunderclap hope, like the soul, is at home in darkness. Hope is divided against itself. But lose your hope and you lose your soul. And you don't want to do that, trust me. Even if you haven't got a soul, and who knows, you shouldn't be careless about it. Will the world end if you act? Who can say? Will you lose your soul, your democratic citizen soul, if you don't act, if you don't organize? I guarantee it. And you will feel really embarrassed at your 10-year class reunion. People will point, I promise you. People always know. No one likes a zombie, even if from time to time people will date them. The great Polish poet Czesław Miłosz has a poem entitled On Angels. You can imagine why I was drawn to it. And it concludes by articulating the best possible answer to the questions, what am I doing here and why me? In the poem, the poet is haunted by a voice. I have heard that voice, he writes, many a time when asleep. And what is strange, I understood, more or less, an order or an appeal in an unearthly tongue. Day draws near, another one. Do what you can. The first time I had to give a commencement speech, I was incredibly nervous. I'd been dating a guy at the time, not a zombie, a nice guy, a graduate student in Victorian literature. Here's another piece of advice. Only date people who have read different set of books than you have. It will save you lots of time in the library. And I told him I didn't know what to say, and he said, you ought to look at Emerson's commencement address to the Harvard Divinity School. And I said, oh, of course, I love Emerson's address to the Harvard Divinity School. This is my last piece of advice. Never admit to not having read something. So I went home and I read it, and it's so beautiful and so true that I was blocked from writing for several weeks. It's so beautiful and true that after Emerson delivered it, Harvard refused to let him back on campus for 30 years. The address begins beautifully, and I have to read it to you. In this refulgent summer, it has been a luxury to draw the breath of life. The grass grows, the buds burst, the meadow is spotted with fire and gold and the tint of flowers. The air is full of birds and sweet with the breath of the pine, the balm of Gilead, and speak the truth, says Ralph Waldo Emerson, and all nature and all spirits help you with unexpected furtherance. Speak the truth, and all things alive or brute are vouchers, and the very roots of the grass underground there do seem to stir and move to bear you witness. Good is positive. Evil is merely privative. It is like cold, which is the privation of heat. All evil is so much death and non-entity. Benevolence is absolute and real. The intuition of the moral sentiment is an insight of the perfection of the laws of the soul. The dawn of the sentiment of virtue on the heart gives and is the assurance that law is sovereign over all natures. But speak the truth, and the worlds, time, space, eternity, do seem to break out into joy. It always goes like this. I start out not knowing what to say, and then I can't shut up. So I'll finish now. Commence already. A million billion mazel to you and your parents and your teachers and to Vassar for having done so self-evidently a magnificent job. I am certain you are aflame. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Now, now, now. Damn the critics and the bad reviews. The world is waiting for you. The world needs you desperately. Organize. Speak the truth. Thanks.